Okay, I'm going to show you how I make my Slinkie rigs that I use for fishing, for drift fishing. Slinkie rig is a really, really nice rig. It's a weight substitute for split shot or lead. It's filled with lead shot or steel bearings. I use steel bearings. Lead shot is hard to find in the sizes I want, and more places are banning the use of lead. So in this case, I use steel slingshot ammo. 3/8 inch is what I'm using for this Slinkie. I get these on Amazon. They're about 250 of them for about $6-7. So it's really an inexpensive thing to do. So the advantage to a Slinkie rig is they don't snag, or they really do, it's harder for them to snag. There are some situations where they'll still snag up, but for the most part they are flexible and they'll roll over objects, whereas say if this was a pyramid sinker, it's going to get stuck underneath here. This isn't really going to get stuck. I use them a lot for drift fishing, where I need to keep the bait mobile, and I'm using the current to present a bait near the bottom and letting it drift fairly naturally with the current. I also use them for sight fishing because they're pretty visible. The fish don't seem to care if there's something this brightly colored sitting on the bottom. I know the general school of thought is you need to do everything you possibly can to keep the fish from being spooked, but in all honesty, there's so much debris and just general things on the bottom of a river that this is nothing that unusual that a fish is going to see this and move away from it. There are exceptions. If you're fishing pristine water, where, like, say out west for trout, and the bottom is a specific type of gravel, a specific size, and there's never any other objects on the bottom, then yeah, I wouldn't use this. I would use maybe a lower profile one, like a black one. But I like these because I can sight fish with them. So if I'm fishing in a couple feet of water toward a pot or red horse, I can cast, and I know my bait's about 12 inches behind it, and I can present the Slinkie rig about 12 inches in front of the fish, and I know the current is bringing the bait closer to the front of the fish. Really is helpful for me. But it's a nice rig. It's also very sensitive. If you use braid, anytime these little ridges hit a rock, I can feel it. It's like this little ba-da-da-da-dum feeling, and I really get a good sense for what the bottom structure is like. So I'm going to show you how I tie these. So this is the process done. So I've got the shoelace, or the hockey lace, and I'm going to trim off a nice sharp edge there. Just open it up a little bit. It makes a little funnel. And since it's polyester, if I run this over a flame, it's going to sort of melt that together. It'll keep it from fraying and opening up. So that's what I'm going to do really quick. For making one Slinkie, that's not that huge of a deal. But a lot of times I would take this whole lace and I would fill it with weights, leaving gaps in between, and make a bunch at once. I'm just going to make one right now. If it's a little cramped or folded in, you can open it up with a little bit of a pencil. There you go. So I'm going to put 6 in here. I'm making a number 6. So that's 2. You just thread them in, or feed them into the tube and slide them down. Feed them in and slide them down. And 6. That's all you need to do. So you got that in there, and you can make these. You can put 10 of them, 12 of them, 4 of them, 2 of them, whatever you need, you can make. I'm going to trim this off here. Trim it fairly close, bunch it a little bit, and then I'm going to run that over the flame, get the end melted really well, and then work it shut so it's sealed shut. So over the flame, you'll see that polyester melting into a plastic, and then I'll just sort of tap it with the pliers, using the steel on the pliers to cool it. And there it is. So that's all sealed shut. So then, normally about a finger width from the last bearing that I put in, or from the first bearing actually, you're going to want to trim this. So you need a little tag end that you can tie that swivel onto. So about 3/4 or about a half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch from that bearing. It might actually have been a tad much. There we go. So then we're going to attach the swivel. So the swivel is going to go inside here, and then this is going to get closed around the swivel. This is where the thread comes in and the glue comes in. You're going to want to be putting, when you wrap it, you want that thread to bind between the loop and the barrel. And that's going to work as a lock to keep it into place. So I'm going to get a little thread together. Doesn't have to be much, just about a foot of it. It is just sewing thread, like quilting thread. Any thread's really going to work for you. I have not had good luck with fishing line. I've tried using fishing line and the knots tend to open up. So thread seems to be the best. So push this in. You can hear it tap the barrel or the bearing in there. So go as far as you can there. Hold that nice and tight. Just hold on to one edge of the thread here, and I don't bother starting it with a knot. I just wrap it and wrap it over itself. And then when I get it a good ways and I feel like it's secure, I will put a little knot in there. And then I'll trim off the rest of the thread. So then I'm going to take super glue, and I'm just going to put a little bit of super glue right over that thread. Not a ton of it, but just enough that it's going to work in there. That'll keep that knot from opening up. Then I'm going to take heat shrink tubing, the 3/8, and I'm going to cut off about a half an inch of it. And then I'm going to take the 1/4 inch shrink tubing and cut off 3/4 of an inch, maybe a little more than a half, somewhere in there. Now, this is 3/8 inch tubing, which is the same size as the bearing, but since we've added the thickness of the lace, it won't fit on there. So this is where I use the pliers. So put the pliers in there, and I just stretch it a little bit. Doesn't have to be much, just enough to get it to fit. You want it to be snug, but that heat's gonna melt that right back together. You slip it over there, and then over the flame. And what this is doing is it's bonding to that bottom bearing, and it's going to keep that from opening up ever. And that's what it'll look like when it's done. You want it tight enough that you can actually see the threads through the shrink tubing. So then we're going to take the 1/4 inch, and again I'm going to have to open this up a little bit. So we just give it a little bit of a stretch. And then that's going to go over the swivel, and it's going to push all of that extra down. And then you sort of work it down to about that point there where you can just see the top of the swivel, or the top of the barrel of the swivel. Hold on to this with the Needlenose pliers. Make sure it's nice and straight, and then go over that tubing with the heat. That's it. That's all you gotta do. So now this is ready to fish with completely. So that's it. And you can make them all different sizes. You can use different thicknesses of laces, different size beads. You can use lead beads. Some people use buckshot, things like that. But you can just work all kinds of different sizes. So this is one that was made with 1/4 inch beads, and that's the 3/8. So these are just some different sizes that I use frequently. I've made them as high as a 12, 15 I think actually, which is double this. I've used that for drift fishing on the Mississippi River. It works. Just you need to keep the bait down there. So hopefully this is helpful. I want to do a video coming up soon on how I fish with Slinkie rigs. I need these storms that we keep getting to stop for me to get into the river that I like to fish. But when that time comes, there will be some videos of that. So hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that helps people out. Good luck.